Hey everybody, we're back. Took a couple days off, got some good sleep. Those of you that work night shift, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like that day or two after you come off of nights just wrecks you. But we're back. Today we're going to get the driver's seat set into the car, and then we're going to double check where our seat mounting holes are going to be. We did some math the last time we filmed and put all our marks in. But this time we're going to put the seat in the car, double check where our marks are, see that everything lines up, then we'll pull the brackets out, tack some bolts into there like we did with the passenger seat, and put them back in the car, and then we'll tack them in place. So let's get to it. Seat's back in the car. You might wonder why I went through the passenger side. There's not enough room here on the driver's side to get the seat kind of around the back of the car and then into the driver's side. So it was actually easier just to come through the passenger side, especially since there's nothing in the way. We hooked up our homemade plumb bob here, and I went from the center line of the steering wheel, intersected the center hub. So we know that the center of the steering wheel is the hub, and the center of the hub will be exactly center. Straight down, and right here where the seat is sitting, we have it lined up perfectly with that stripe that we were hoping to get lined up to. So we know right now the front of this seat is exactly in the center where we want it, so that we're positioned between the pedals, all that fun stuff. So right now what we need to do is we need to make a couple of marks where our seat rails are going to be. We need to make a lot of marks actually, so we don't repeat the mistakes that we had last time of not being able to figure out where exactly our seat was going to be, and taking up a whole bunch of time we don't need to spend by chasing around the issue of not having everything in the right place. So I will grab a pen, we will get to do some marking, and then I'll pull everything back out. I'll weld up the nuts on the bottom side, put some primer on it, and tack these into the car. And then we can put both seats in the car, bolt them down, and you can see what it looks like with both seats actually in the car. Awesome. We are all set up on the bench here. We've got our holes marked. We're going to center punch so that we don't slip off of what we're doing. We get our holes in the right place the first time. And then now we're going to set these up with our nuts and bolts and tack them up. can see, we're a little bit up on the edge there, but I'm not concerned about that because we're going to have that front cross member that we're going to go through and weld to as well. So we're going to have plenty of rigidity in case of a failure, which we hope we never have. But we're going to be. So I had a change of heart before I started welding this. We could go ahead and do it this way, where we have this bolt hole right up at the front, this one set up here. I think what we're going to do instead is we're going to move both of these back one notch on the slider, so the sliders won't be exactly even left and right. Truth be told, I did the same thing on the passenger side without even knowing it. So I'm going to take these out. I'm going to move this back exactly the distance of one set of notches on the slider, which is 2 centimeters. And then re-drill the holes, weld up the holes that I didn't need, and we'll proceed that way. If any of you watch Mike Holmes, I know he'd be proud of me, because he'd be like, come on Jeff, do it right, do it right. Let's do it right. For welding up our holes, since we drilled a pretty big one, we're going to put this little piece of copper behind each one of these holes to dissipate the heat and give us something that the weld material won't stick to. First one's still a little warm, so we're going to let that one cool off. We'll take the nuts out of here, or take the bolts out. So as you can see from that welding up that little copper stuff, it's not perfect, but it does a really good job of filling a hole. I'll show you those here in a moment. So you can see here, got a little wire that's stuck there, but this is the spot that we welded up. If we tried to weld that up without using the copper as a backing piece, that's just a little spoon of copper. You can hold it on the back side of a panel that you're working on or whatever, but if we wouldn't have used that, we probably would have had a much more difficult time of welding it up. So I know that this is a little floppy right now. We need to go back and reinforce this once we have it tacked in the car and we know it's going to be exactly where it needs to be. So I'm going to get the other bolts out. I'm going to hit these with the flap wheel and grind down the extra here that we welded up, make it nice and flush, make it look nice from outside the car. Throw some primer on them and we'll get them in. Alright, we ground down our fending bits, but I forgot to do that before I wiped it down the first time. So now we'll give everything one more wipe with ISO. Going to put the bolts in here so that we don't spray our threads. We've got our coat of primer on the inside. I didn't do anything about the outside because we're going to be welding to it, and we're going to cover that later with the coating instead of trying to weld through two coating. Even though this is a weld through primer, it's just easier to only have it on the inside where you can't get at stuff. So let's go put these in the car. So I used an old piece of metal that I took out of the side here just to prop the seat up at an angle. What I'm going to do is, because I want this to be exactly where it was when I took it out, when I made the marks and took these out, I want to make sure that these are exactly where they need to be. My plan is I'm going to bolt our bases to our seat and then put the seat down in position, making sure that everything is lined up on the center of the car and that our marking stripe on the seat was exactly where we want it. So I've made another mistake. Apparently when I measured the distance between the holes, or what I should have done is measured the distance between the holes. This one is just a little bit short, like very, very little bit. The easiest way to fix that is going to be to take a little bit out of the seat rail, make that hole just a little bit larger. The other option is to cut my bracket in the back and then bolt it together, tack it in, and then weld up the gap, which is probably the better way to do it, as opposed to enlarging enlarging the seat hole. So I think the next thing I should do is check the passenger or the inside track and see if I screwed that one up. As you can see from that side, the right side of the seat, that one went on great. I just made a mistake in my measurements on the outside or the driver's side of the seat. So let's fix it. The easiest way to fix this, aside from grinding off the nut on the bottom, is to move it forward to the another mounting position on the bottom of the seat. A couple places we can put bolts in. I was measuring this one to the rear mounting point. The factory one is actually forward of that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut out this piece, move it forward, because we're going to shorten this up anyway, and we'll move it forward, figure out exactly where it needs to be. We already know it needs to be 14 and 3/8. Better write that down. Between the bolt holes, so we can just go from our existing hole, which we already know is correct. That's where our center, that's where our bolt needs to be. So we'll measure from here to here, cut it out that much further forward, and then section it in, stitch it up, be good to go. Now we'll clamp this together, check it one more time before we tack weld it, or we'll weld it up once we know it fits, and we can weld it in the car. We've clamped our mistake together. We're going to try bolting it up here and seeing if it matches up to the holes. You are getting sleepy. I did not make any mistakes. Perfect. We got it clamped into position. Now we'll just head back over to the bench, pull this off of here first, and then weld this up. We'll be good to go. Alright, I already tacked up the passenger side without you guys looking. Kind of snuck that one in there. I'm just going to do a couple little quick tacks and then we'll take the seat out. Alright, just a quick tack should be enough to get it out to undo it. So I'm going to pull the seat out while you guys aren't looking. Maybe I'll let you look. And then I'll weld up the rest of it.